Now, I was reading how you actually do this before I went to sleep last night, and it added an extra half an hour on my bed advice time because I couldn't stop reading it. Tell us exactly how you capture an animal at right up close range with your bare hands and a bit of rope, and that animal is looking at you and thinking, "Oh, lunch."
Yeah, that's about right there, Richard.
How do you do it?
Well, there's a few different ways, but I think straight up you've got to get in there, understand the situation you're in, and some of these crocodiles are over 5 metres long. Well, they're big animals, weighing in about 800 to a tonne.
And the strongest bite in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing, pretty much, is you've got to get that head rope or the nose rope over the jaws of that crocodile. Once you've got that, you've got a bit of security on him, and then let him tire himself out, but not too much, because if he tires himself out too much, he'll build up that lactic acid and you'll kill him. So you've got to... It's a delicate
You allow
line.
them to do what's called the death roll.
Yeah.
What's that exactly?
So that's their defence mechanism. It's their survival mechanism. When they're tearing lumps of meat off of cattle or horses or anything that's dead, they'll spin around, and that's how they'll tear the meat before they swallow it. But they also do it when they're getting restrained. They'll spin, trying to get away. They think that's their defence mechanism. So once that's done, it's closing the jaws, taping them up, and securing all their sensory organs so it calms them down.
But you only get one shot. I mean, if you miss with the rope loop and it doesn't get over the animal's snout, it's going to come for you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. You
get one shot.
You've got to be pretty accurate with what you're doing, especially when you're in a small sort of cage or trap and he's moving around
Amazing.
a bit.
Isn't there easier ways of doing this? You have to go one on... Isn't this an example of when technology might be helpful, you know? Is it because you feel that it's better for the crocodiles, or is it partly your adrenaline?
Yeah, no, the adrenaline's sort of... I've been doing this for about 20 years, catching a lot of animals all around the world, but the crocs are always fascinating. And how we build the traps is to keep them, de-stress them, make sure they're comfortable in their environment and in the water, and then we can work with them. If you try and put them in a big metal cage, they'll thrash around and hurt themselves.
I see. So you're risking yourself for the good of them, and you and it is a genuine risk, isn't it? I mean, we often watch things that happen on television and assume that somehow it's slightly magical and is really protected. But, of course, we know with Steve Irwin, who was a very well-known person who highlighted coming up close to dangerous animals and ultimately lost his life because of stingray, that these things can go wrong.
Because he was stung in the chest, wasn't he, by a stingray?
Yeah, not one of the most dangerous animals, in fact, that finally
just
put paid to him.
Working with wildlife in general, you know, things, it's unpredictable. And then you throw other machinery in and weather, you know, the variables and the risk is reasonably high at times. But, understand the job.
Can you get life insurance?
No.
I wouldn't have thought you could.
Please don't break yourself while you're here, because we can't afford to repay you. You're very valuable.
Yeah, life insurance just...
Is this not going to happen, is it?
You bring your...
Keep it all in the wife's name.
You bring your son along. You've got your son involved.
So
I imagine he's fascinated. We saw him not up close with a crocodile, but with a python. And why do you feel you can have your toddler involved?
I think the way of the world this day and age with kids with iPads, and they're losing touch with the natural environment, and being able to sort of bring Banjo up in this sort of environment and educating about the wildlife, hands-on, knowing what's dangerous, what's not, it is great for kids, and he's going to grow up with all this experience and education and follow on looking after the environment.
We should explain that the reason you do this is because crocodiles are clearly a threat to human life and to farm animal life. So when a croc gets into an area where it's threatening people, that's when you're called in to catch them. Now, in the old days, because I remember reading a book about this, an autobiography of a guy who did what you did about 50 years ago, and he shot them.
Yeah.
You know, that's what happened. They were just taken out with a 303, you know, steel-tipped bullet. What's changed in terms of the attitude towards these animals since that time?
I think the attitude around the world of the days of hunting and killing everything is changing in general. And yes, everyone shot the crocs down to a number of about 4,000. We've now spent the last 40, 50 years protecting them and brought them back up to about 140,000 crocs. So attitude's changing. People are trying to work and keep the balance in the natural environment with you know, with the crocodiles. Now, yes, the crocodiles are a threat, but the humans are a bigger threat to the crocodile, like you said.
So where do you take them? Where do you relocate
We'll
them?
try and keep them on the same property if we can, if they're in distress. And, you know, if you've got big flood water come through and these animals, these crocodiles end up in sort of paddocks where the cattle are, then we'll move them back into the main waterway.
How far away? I mean, in terms of distance?
A few kilometres, 10 kilometres,
And how do
20
you get them
kilometres.
there?
Well, different ways of transport.
Use a chopper?
Yep, yeah, we'll sling them out with the helicopter. Yep.
And didn't you have a crocodile actually clung on to your helicopter?
Yeah, that was a few years ago. There's been a few incidents like that, a few close calls. But it's part of the job, and you do get some interesting moments. But it's a great life up there, and you just got to...
Wow.
It's like any job. If you know what you're doing, the risk level's a lot lower.
Have you ever come up close to an alligator? Because can you end the debate that we've had a lot on this show of the difference between the two, other than one you see later and one you see in a while? What is the difference between the two, and how do you spot them?
Alligators have got big, rounded snout on them. They're a lot more placid than a saltwater crocodile.
Really?
Yeah, and they don't get as large as the saltwater croc. The saltwater crocodile is the largest croc in the world.
Can they interbreed?
That's a good question. I haven't seen any crossover yet, but that's an interesting concept.
Okay.
Hey, they interbreed dogs and all that other animals. I'm sure a crocodile's probably on the list.
An alley croc.
Alley croc.
It's been fascinating to have you here, Matt. We could talk for hours about it. It's been so interesting. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
What's the programme called?
It's Wild Croc Territory, showing on Netflix. It's been shown for the last... got aired a couple of weeks ago.
Wild Croc Territory on Netflix.
Yeah.